How to buy real estate at foreclosure auctions. So welcome back. In this episode, I'm going to answer your question, how to buy real estate at foreclosure auctions. Now, my name is Ted Thomas. I've been involved in real estate, since the 1970s. Can you imagine that? All right, so that's a lot of years. Now, I started out, and when I specialized in real estate, I learned a lot about just buying regular real estate and renting it and selling it and whatever. And then I got involved in really specialized real estate, and that was foreclosures. Now, this is a big market. It's huge. And I did mostly pre-foreclosures and the auctions. So it's going to be a big and new market that we're facing in this next few years. Now, it's going to be foreclosure, foreclosure, foreclosure. I don't know what's going to happen when this pandemic is completely cleared up. But you're going to enjoy this lesson. It's going to open up your mind to a whole new market. Hopefully, you're not a victim of this foreclosure. But today's episode is going to answer your question, how to buy and sell at those real estate auctions. But these are foreclosure auctions, and they're going to be conducted on the courthouse steps. So let's talk a little bit about that. I'm going to share with you how you can make a bundle of money. Now, I'm also going to tell you that there's a few challenges. Now, this is not going to be just an easy piece of cake deal, okay? So stick with me to the end, and I'll go through as much of the foreclosure as I can. I spent many years in this business myself. Now, the ideas I share with you are going to be to show you how to make money. This is a huge market. I mean, expect thousands of these to happen. Now, I'll be right back, and I'll share with you some mistakes that you want to avoid when I come back. Okay, what are we talking about today? How to buy real estate at foreclosure auction. All right, now the market's going to change, so you need to start your planning now. We've been through some boom-bust things, and right now there's a booming real estate market on high-end properties, but we're going to have a lot of people that are going to have challenges making their payments because they've lost jobs. So my name is Ted Thomas, and I've been involved in this foreclosure business for almost 2 decades before I got involved with tax liens and deeds. I prefer the tax lien and deed business, but I'll tell you about that on another time. Okay, now, the pandemic is slowly correcting, okay? Now, I don't know what people are doing with the money. I know the government has been sending out massive amounts of checks to people. Hopefully, some of those people are making their mortgage payments, or they're getting forbearance, and they're going to hold off on their payments. But if they don't pay and the forbearance agreements expire, there's going to be massive foreclosure. So kind of stay with me. I'll have some gifts for you later at the end of this program, but you need to open up your mind to this new part of the business. Okay, now foreclosures happen everywhere, okay? So we're going to learn a little bit about the auctions. They take place on country club properties. They take place in the not so good part of town, and they take place right in the middle market. So if you're in the bread and butter market on real estate properties in that 150 to 300,000 range, there's going to be tons of foreclosure. So it happens to wealthy people, it happens to working people who lose their jobs. So this is going to be a big market. So you want to develop some insight as to whether you want to be involved in it. Now, I know you want to make money, and I know you want to purchase at bargains. So as soon as people hear about a foreclosure auction, in their mind, it's a bargain. Well, there are some bargains there, but all of the properties aren't bargains. If the bank lent 97% of the value, I can tell you, you don't want to pay 97% of the property. So a bank foreclosure is simply the bank trying to get their collateral back. Well, if they're getting the collateral back at 97% or more, you're probably not going to want that one. So there's going to be millions of these properties and plenty to look at. So in the next few minutes, I'll give you the who, what, where, when, and why, and then you can decide what part of this you want to be involved with. Now, understand, this is a competitive market. I know you want to make money, but other people want to make money too. So don't think this is a piece of cake. Now, the risks are high in foreclosure. Why are the risks high? Number one, because you're going to have to pay off the banker, okay? A foreclosure is taking place because the bank is trying to recover their collateral. So what they do is they have a lawsuit. Now, what's this lawsuit about? Well, the bank has to hire an attorney to foreclose on a mortgage. So they hire an attorney, and that's a judicial process. That could take 6 months, it could take 9 months, it could take 2 years. Depends upon how quick they want to work. Well, I can assure you that attorneys don't work quickly, and the judge doesn't work quickly. So it could take 9 months to even 2 years. The challenge is, once the gavel comes down by the judge and he's made a decision, they will auction the property more than likely on the courthouse steps. And when they do that auction, the auctioneer is probably going to be a sheriff working for the judge, and they're going to do this foreclosure. All right, so the person that is in foreclosure, that's the person that owns the property. That's going to be the defendant in the lawsuit, and the plaintiff is going to be the bank. And the bank is suing so they can recover their collateral. They just want the property back. At any price, they want the property back. All right, so if you buy at that auction, you are more than likely paying off a bank loan. So I started talking about risk. So that's a risk in itself, because if you pay too much, now you've got a big problem if you pay too much. All right, there's going to be other risks. For example, what are you going to do with it when you get it? So I don't want you to think this is a piece of cake. It's not a piece of cake, because most people, they get a foreclosure, they want to bootstrap. By that I mean they want to fix it themselves. They want to paint it and clean it, make it look nice and do all that. All right, that takes time. That takes money. So now you got money invested in the property. Now you're going to have money invested as the clock ticks. You're going to have to start making payments. You're going to have to pay taxes. You're going to have to pay upkeep. You're going to have to pay electrical. You're going to have to pay for your fix-up. So make sure that you have enough money. All right, now there's lots of risk. The first risk is, did you pay too much? Second risk, did you estimate your cost of fixing it up? Well, if you did that right, you might be okay. Now the final risk is there a market for the property? Now, fortunately, a lot of people think foreclosure auction is a bargain. Well, if you watch late night television, it's always a bargain. But I can assure you, people pay too much, it costs them too much to fix it up, and then they don't know what the market is, and so they can't sell it. So when I say there's risk in foreclosure, take my word for it. I've been there and learned that lesson in the hard way. All right, so you got to be careful what you pay for it. You got to be careful of what you're going to do on the fix-up, and you got to be careful that you know exactly what's going on in the market. All right, now we went through a crisis from 2006 to about 2013 or 14, and the market was going down a lot faster than anybody could ever anticipate. And you thought you bought a bargain, but the market kept dropping. Now in places like Phoenix, Arizona, Las Vegas, Nevada, properties dropped 50, 60, 70%. People that weren't in foreclosure, the market went below what their house was worth. All right, now, how do they do this? Well, a foreclosure takes place, and then there's going to be an auction on the courthouse steps. All right, now, generally in the eastern states, they use a mortgage. So a mortgage means it's a judicial process. That means there's going to be an attorney involved. There's going to be judges involved. The sheriff's going to be involved. All of them take time. All right, so that's going to cause the foreclosure to take a long time. You're going to get involved at the courthouse auction. So when you do that, you've got to make sure you have margin. You've got to make sure you're buying it low enough so that you can carry the payments on it, and you can do the fix-up if you're bootstrapping it, and you're under the market so you can resell it. Now, in California, Texas, and a lot of the West, they don't use a mortgage. They use a deed of trust. That's a lending device. It's a document. All right. Now, with a deed of trust, the lender really likes that document, because you heard me say a foreclosure could take 6 months, 9 months, 2 years. Well, I'm going to tell you, with a deed of trust, it's going to happen like instantaneously. Okay, so when that foreclosure takes place, there will not be a sheriff, and there will not be a lawsuit going on. That will be done by the deed of trust, and the trustee, who's in charge of all that, the trustee will auction the property. All right, now, in Texas, if you foreclose today, 21 days later, they're on the courthouse steps auctioning that property. So the trustee gives them 21 days. I'm telling you, they're serious about collections. All right, in California, it's like 111 days. Now, I'm not going to repeat them all, but you're getting the idea. So what takes place a long time in the eastern part of the United States, 6 months, 9 months, 2 years, well, it's going to be really fast with a deed of trust. It could be different in each state. So the point is, you need to understand this. But the sale on the courthouse steps is the same sale. So one is done by a sheriff, not to be confused with a trustee in the West. All right, now neither of these processes are complicated. The attorneys make it complicated. It's nothing more than the lender attempting to get their property back. It's a legal process. Now keep in mind, the lender put up significant money, and now they want the collateral. The collateral was the property. They want it back so they can sell it and try and get their money back. So it's a simple process. The bank creates a lawsuit or the trustee takes action. That means if it's a lawsuit, attorneys and the judge are not moving quickly. If it's a judicial process, it's slow. If it's a deed of trust process, you can be assured that's going to happen quickly. But either case, right now you're just learning how to do it. Well, you're going to go to the courthouse steps and buy. This is not without risk. When you buy at either one of these sales, you're basically paying the money that the bank really wants to have. All right, so foreclosures have been around for decades. They go all the way back to Jerusalem, so they're not going away. They'll be here. Some cities and counties will have as many as 100 to 500 a week. I have been involved in foreclosure auctions in a place like Los Angeles, not in this particular market, but in other markets where it was 1,000 properties a week were going to foreclosure. That's how bad the market can get. Let's hope it doesn't do that again. Okay, so let's just do a quick review here on this foreclosure thing. I don't want you to think that I'm negative on the business, because I'm not. I spent a lot of years doing this, but I don't think everybody tells you all the things to consider. And I certainly can't in the few minutes we have today. But let's say the property value was $150,000, which you've already confirmed. Okay, if the foreclosure is in progress and the bank is telling you we want a minimum of $50,000, well, that's, if you got the property for that, you're going to feel really, really good, because you've got a huge market between margin, I should say, between 50 and 150. All right, now others are going to recognize the same thing. So you need to be thinking just what it says on the slide. What are you willing to pay? Okay, what's the estimated fix-up cost? What's your selling price going to be? What's your estimated return? All right, I can't stress enough that you need to be thinking about the exit strategy. Why? Because when you purchase foreclosure, they have risk from day one. What are your risks? Well, your risks are, number one, why do you have risk? You got a purchase price. Your next why the answer is fix-up cost. Your next why the answer is holding cost. All right, what about the money for fix-up? What about labor? You got to think about that. Why? The next why is, what are your selling costs going to be? Every why represents risk. Why are you doing this? You need to justify those costs. Hope this helps you a lot. All right, so remember that foreclosure is quick in the western part of the states. It's western part of the United States, and it's relatively slow in the eastern part. But in both cases, it's an auction on the courthouse steps. When you go to that auction, you better have money. Now, if you don't have money, the sheriff can ask you, say, do you have money? Let's see your money. They're allowed to do that. Why? Because they don't want anybody bidding in the auction that doesn't have money to pay for it there. So you need to know the auction rule. So much like the tax, lien, and deed business, if you don't know the rules, for goodness sake, don't get involved in either of these businesses until you do. Now, keep in mind, if you're learning this from a television infomercial, they're not trying to do a bad thing. They're trying to let you know that it's there, but they're not going through the rules and the regulations. And if you don't learn those and you make a mistake, it's your money that's at risk. Now, let me say that again. It's your money that's at risk. So remember, when you buy at this auction, it's buyer beware. So the auction results in a judge saying, sell the property. And when the sheriff sells it, they mean exactly that. And if you don't put up the money when you're supposed to, they can take action against you. All right, so none of this is all that difficulty. So what are you trying to do? You're trying to buy at an auction. All right, so let's say the property's worth $150,000 and the auction starts at $50,000. Wow, think of the margin. The first starting bid is $50,000, but it's worth $150,000. Well, you'd sure like to buy for $50,000 if it was worth $150,000. You can see that margin instantaneously. Well, keep in mind, you're not going to be the only one at this auction. So be prepared to what price you're willing to go to, all right? Now, that margin looks generous and nice, but don't think other people aren't thinking about that. So you would like to do that, but you need to figure out what will you bid up to, and you're going to need all that money, plus the money to fix it up, plus the money to maintain the property and pay your crews or whatever you're going to do to fix this thing. So this is not a piece of cake. It's not easy. Did I say it wasn't profitable? No, it can be plenty profitable if you go there and it's snowing and nobody else shows up and you can get that property for $50,000 and it's worth $150,000. I don't know what's going to happen at the auction, but I can tell you it's the world of the weird. All right, so I'm getting ready to button this up and finish up. So before I do, I'm going to take a couple of questions. tax lien business is much different, but in the tax lien business, if you're buying tax liens, you don't evict anybody from the house, because what really happens, a tax lien allows the state and the legislature, they allow the people to stay in the property. So that's a very benevolent thing for them to do. But they're in default, but they let them stay in the property. Actually, what happens is the county will guide you in that. Some counties you'll have to go through a formal foreclosure process, but everything, it won't have all the time limits like regular foreclosures will. They'll have so many days to get out, but there will be a notice process. So foreclosure is nothing more than a lender or you notifying the people that we're going to take your property away from you and you're going to lose it. We're going to confiscate your property. You're forfeiting your property because you either didn't pay the taxes or you didn't pay the mortgage. Okay, with all that said, I'm going to button it up for now, but I want you to know below me there's a special gift, and it'll teach you about tax liens and tax deeds. It's a free gift. You can take that. You can learn the whole thing online. And, oh, by the way, if you are going to go to an auction, make sure you've looked at the property. We always tell people in the tax lien and deed business, you can buy online. So you want to be careful. You want to make sure you've gone out and looked at the property because maybe it burned down and maybe there was a big flood. And by the same token, when you go to a foreclosure auction, you want to make sure that you've got an exit strategy. People forget about that. They get a bargain, and then it costs them so much to fix it up that it's no longer the bargain. Listen, you can't sell it. If you buy a bargain, you better make sure it's a bargain when it comes for sale. I'm Ted Thomas.